All right, welcome everybody. I am Cheryl Matthew, or my name is Cheryl Matthew, and this is a workshop that I put on weekly through the Heartfelt Foundation to support all of us and our family and friends with any topic related to all the beautiful things that happen as we age. So we'll start off. So today's topic is if and when to move to an assisted living. So again, my name is Cheryl. I have been a geriatric care manager for over 20 years and have been assisting people through all the stages of aging. Been a hospice social worker, hospital discharge planner, worked as a director in a memory care, assisted living, adult daycare for people with dementia, and also a private geriatric care manager. So when people want to stay at home and make that happen. So I've seen kind of the ins and outs of, staying at home, being in assisted living, the pros and cons of both. So I wanted to talk about that today. So what is assisted living, first of all? So as we get older, we have some choices. One is we can just stay at home, where at home would be like wherever you are living right now. Sometimes that's in your own home. Sometimes it's an apartment. Some people decide at some age to move into like a senior apartment situation where it's they don't have any services necessarily, but it's maybe either an apartment for usually like 55 and older. And sometimes it's a whole community where the whole neighborhood or condo, whatever the situation is only for people 55 and older. That is still considered independent living. And that's when people don't really need any kind of care for themselves. They just want to live close by people. Then sometimes people want to choose to live in an assisted living. So there's independent and assisted. Assisted living is when people need some kind of care with their activities of daily living. Now, sometimes people move into an assisted living community and don't need any assistance. They just prefer to be in a place that has a lot of activities and that someone else is doing the cooking for them. So an assisted living community would provide meals. They provide usually 3 meals a day. Sometimes they'll have snacks out in between. And they usually have a lot of activities such as cards. They go on trips together. There's a lot of socialization involved. So, well, it's funny because I just went to I'm ready to move into an assisted living now. I used to be a director of a memory care community in assisted living that was just gorgeous. It was like being on a cruise ship. I could totally move in there now. As I'm getting older, the allure of having my own home and, I'll do repairs myself and I'll paint and I'll do all these things with my own place. I'm wanting to spend less of my time maintaining those things. So it's appealing to me to be in a place that I wouldn't have to do some things, like I wouldn't have to really grocery shop that much. I wouldn't have to cook. I wouldn't have to clean up. So I say that because we don't have to get to 90 years old and go, well, I'm finally ready. This is the time I'm ready for an assisted living. So we talk about what is the time to move into some kind of a community. Sometimes it's about money. What's our budget? Can we afford to move into an assisted living. And sometimes it's just a desire uh, to be around other people, to have a lower maintenance of, things you're responsible for. Assisted livings look different. Sometimes they're like, especially in California, they're called a 6-bed boarding care. Sometimes in other places, they're be called a residential care community for the elderly. That is usually a regular house in a regular neighborhood, and they're licensed for up to 6 people. Many times, those homes have a lot. The population is typically advanced dementia, so it's a smaller community. So the caregivers can keep an eye on everybody, and also the door can be secured so people with dementia don't go wandering off. Although there are times that you can find 6-bed boarding cares that have more active people, so it's not a requirement of a 6-bed boarding care that they have dementia, but it's more typical for people with dementia. Assisted living communities can be small. Maybe I don't usually see them as small as 20 to 30 apartments, but more like 50 to 200 people living together. So they each have their own apartment. Sometimes they'll have full kitchens also, so you can cook for yourself if you like. And then they provide services as someone needs them. So you can stay in your own apartment, and then they can send caregiving into your apartment as you need it. So if you need help dressing or bathing or transferring from the bed to get to the toilet, if you need medication management, they can help with that as well. If you need a ride or someone to go with you to the doctors, they can provide that. Some people decide they want to stay at home as well, I was going to say as long as possible. There's two things. One, some people decide to stay at home forever, and some people decide to stay at home for as long as they can. And some of the services they provide at assisted living, they look to family and friends for that kind of help. When I was first in business as a care manager 20 some years ago, what I heard was people wanted to stay home, or at some point, the parent said to the kid, "Hey, I want to stay home." And so their child was like, "Yes, I'll keep you at home." Now, a long time ago, so with this cohort of like people say over 75 right now, they assisted living looked a lot different. And so sometimes when we say assisted living, what they're picturing is a nursing home. And a nursing home is more what you'll see if someone's in a hospital and they need more care, but they're not ready to go home yet, they'll be discharged to a nursing home. And that's when you're sharing a room with someone, maybe 2 or 3 people. It's fairly loud, it's very medical, they keep you in bed most of the time because they don't want you to fall. And you have an aide there, and sometimes it takes a long time to get help to your room and things like that. So it's not that is different, very different than an assisted living can be. So for that cohort, when they said, "I want to stay home forever," well, that made a lot of sense because there weren't the nice places available. But today there's some very, very nice assisted livings available. And so first I kept people home, and we get caregiving in the home. Sometimes it starts off with like 4 hours a day, maybe a few times a week. And then it progressed. If they didn't have any friends or family around, it progressed to 24-hour live-in care and kept them at home, and got them on hospice at the end, and they stay at home. But what I saw was that even with a trained caregiver, the caregiver and the one person at home ran out of things to do. So they were just sitting and watching television all the time. And then some people started moving to an assisted living, and I started to see them thrive more than my clients ever did at home. And mainly it was because the socialization was big. They really enjoyed the routine. They enjoyed the activities. The food was usually really good. At home, it's a little, they weren't eating as well or drinking regularly, staying hydrated, which is important as we age. Moving and just being more active. So at an assisted living, they were being more active than home. It's easier to sit down on the couch and just watch television. So it really changed my mind about assisted living. So I'm a big fan of assisted living now. It's not for everybody. There are pros and cons. But I think the main message is to be open to the possibility, because I find some people are just like, that's just off their list of things that they want to aspire to. So as a plan B, so you go plan A is I'm going to stay home. Plan B, as we're starting to get older and we think, I'm starting to need a little bit of help and I really actually miss having people around, I would suggest going to wherever the location is you want to be, that city, and just start looking at some places, touring some places, kind of get a feel. So if you decide at some point that's someplace you want to go, you already have a vision like, oh yeah, I know this is where I'm going to go. And the only thing you need to move into an assisted living, we need money. And then you need a physician's report. Your doctor fills that out to say, hey, you're fine. You've got these, you're taking these medications, and because the assisted living is going to be responsible for your care, and you need a TB test. And other than that, you can move into assisted living fairly quickly. A lot of assisted livings are on a 30-day, month-to-month basis. There are what's called continuing care communities, which usually have a large move-in fee, maybe $100,000, $200,000, and to buy in. And then you still have a monthly fee. It's typically lower than a month-to-month assisted living fee. But if you, and they promise to take care of you forever. So maybe they start with it independent living, and then you move to assisted, and maybe there's nursing care or memory care at that place. But they say if you run out of money, we'll take care of you. And what's true about those places is that it sort of sounds good, and know that they do the math ahead of time to figure out if you're going to be someone that is going to cost them money, because then they don't let you move in unless you have the assets to pay. They have an actuary, they know how long you're going to live. They figure out, yes, you're going to be able to pay for that long. So it works out for both of the people. Those are less common than assisted living month to month. There's usually a move-in fee, a couple $1,000s, and then you're on month to month, and you just give them a 30-day notice if you want to move out. So signs that it may be starting to be time to think about an assisted living is when someone's having difficulty managing everyday tasks. It could be driving, because they have driving services. It could be, grocery shopping. It could be cleaning. It could be cooking, dressing, bathing. The activities of daily living where it starts to be difficult, and you think, if I keep doing this by myself, I may fall, and that's something you want to avoid, because falls can lead to other things that aren't so fun as far as quality of life. So safety concern is a big reason people end up moving into assisted living. If they're having falls, they want someone else around, so that if they're living by themselves, if they're having car accidents, so things start to change, either physically or mentally. Or if people are feeling socially isolated, it's often a time that they want to move. So the average cost for assisted living in 2024 is about $4,900 a month. nationally. For Los Angeles or parts of California, it could be higher. For parts in, other less expensive places to live, it could be lower, but say $60,000 a year. And the other thing to think about is if someone is with a partner, you can live together in an assisted living. I've had a couple calls recently of people, there's a married couple. One of the couples is healthy and well cognitively, but the other person has dementia. And if the dementia gets progressed enough, that person will need memory care and the other person won't need memory care. So then, both of these people are figuring out, how do I afford that? Because one person's going to live in assisted living and one is in memory care. So if you're paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 for each apartment, that could be expensive. What else do I want to tell you before I ask for your questions? I think it's important to think about these options and communicate them with your family and friends, your powers of attorney. And even though you may not need it right as you're starting to think about it, if you can pre-plan, if you can think about the options ahead of time, it will help you and the people that may be assisting you. So if something happens, like, oh, you had a fall and then you can't go home right away and it's time for assisted living, you've already looked at the places and hey, these are my options. How do you find an assisted living? So there are online places, and the biggest one you'll hear about is called A Place for Mom. Place for Mom does senior housing referral, and they'll say, hey, call us up. We're a free service. I would actually suggest not to call them, because they will start the downfall of using someone from that company is that they will say, where do you want to live? And then they will kind of, okay, let me back a step. There are senior housing placement agents, and they will help you find a senior housing placement or assisted living, and it will be a free service to you, and that company will get a referral fee from the assisted living, and then they don't charge you. It's important to know, and I actually do some of that myself. Well, it's important to know that that's how it works, and also to find a company that will give you all of the options, even though they may not have a contract with them, and that will take care of you in the process. What happens with the big companies is that they will find where you want to live. I want to live in Temecula. So they just send an email out to all the assisted livings like in the area with your name on it, and they may not provide any more services, but because they were the first one to give that assisted living your name, that's all of a sudden the referral fee will go to them. So they don't have if you you can look online for reviews and things like that with that company in particular. The other way to go is to go to someone that's not going to get a referral fee, potentially, or someone that will be more of a hands-on, in-person concierge level. So for the times, this is not my main business, I do it, but it's more of a concierge. Like, I meet the person at the assisted living. We may go to several. I help them with the move. I help them with the pros and cons. It's like a hands-on coaching for that process. If you don't live near me or want other options, and this is not a sales pitch for me by any means, I just want to let you know that some people are like, I didn't even know you did that, Cheryl. So here's me telling you I do it. But if you go to aginglifecare.com, aginglifecare.com, that is a National Association of Geriatric Care Managers. And then you type in the zip code of wherever you're going to be. I'm going to go to Temecula. You type in that, and it'll come up with geriatric care managers or aging life professionals in that area, and you can ask them if they have referrals. And those are people that are in that area that have been on the ground, that probably have clients at the different assisted livings in town that can actually provide you um, just some real feedback. Yeah, that's what I'll say. So you want to get a local professional so that they know the pros and cons of that. So those are kind of that's the outline of assisted living. And I'd love to open it up to you all if you have questions, comments. Happy to answer whatever you have. What are you thinking? Hi, Lucy.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for opening up to questions. My question is about long-term care insurance and
Mhm.
how that applies to the various scenarios. And like I'm just about to turn 55, and I'm thinking about, you know, various scenarios way down the line. And I'm like, hey, would doing long-term care insurance be something that I could do now to support myself if I wanted a plan B of a super cool, funky, artistic assisted living place when I'm 90, you know?
Yes, I
So,
love
what are
that.
your thoughts on that?
I love that. So long-term care insurance is a tricky, it's not tricky. It's complicated. Um, it is for some people and it's not for others. And it keeps changing. So the policies that were written 10, 20 years ago are different than the policies you can get today. Um, Sometimes part of it is because people are living longer and these insurance companies are realizing, hey, I'm going to have to pay out a lot. And how do we arrange it so that we are not doing that? Um, so I have looked at it for myself. The coolest product I see today is, and part of it depends, is the person uh, single? Are they married? Do they have dependents? So a friend of mine who's in the industry, in a geriatric industry, said, I got long-term care insurance because my husband is not a caregiver. And I know if something happens to me, he is not going to be my person to take care of me. So I got long-term care insurance for that. For me, I looked at it and it's very expensive. And if you end up using it, it can work. And if you don't use it, then it's like, geez, that's a lot of money I paid. It's just like any insurance, right? Car insurance is expensive. And if you use it, it's great. Um, so they have a cool product now, which is a combination life insurance, long-term care insurance. So if you're paying your premiums and you die, there's actually a life insurance benefit for your loved ones. But if you pay your premiums and then you end up needing long-term care, which means either assisted living or caregiving at home. So you need sometimes you need help with 2 or 3 activities of daily living to qualify for the benefit to kick in. Like you need help dressing, bathing, transferring, eating, etc. So then it kicks in. Um, I would say get some quotes from different companies and go with a a good company. There's there are levels of, and I don't remember the name right now, but there are like quality levels of insurance because some long-term care insurance companies have gone out of business because they've had so much output, they've paid so many benefits, they go bankrupt. So, there's big ones like MetLife, John Hancock, or Genworth, things like that. They're big companies, so you want to know that they're around if you need them. So I would call them, I would call an agent and get some quotes. And there's also different choices that you have as far as, do you want it to be X amount of years long? So sometimes they say, we'll pay, okay, so it's years or it's amount per day or month. So they have some limits on them. So some are, we'll pay you $150 a day, and it'll be for 2 years. and then your policy will elapse. Or we'll pay up to $40,000. So there'll be some limit. And some will be like, well, we'll pay for the rest of your life. Again, all those parameters are changing because people are living longer and they're moving into assisted living, or they're getting help at home. Where before, people would live as long, and sometimes they would be at home with family, and so they wouldn't ever access. They would almost forget that they had long-term care insurance, or they would be afraid to access it, to have the insurance policy kick in, or they'd wait so long to get help, then they use the benefit for a short period of time. So I'd get the premium, I'd find out what that is, and then do the math. So if they're charging you $3,000 a year for this premium, and you might not use it till you're 90. So if someone's 60 now and they're thinking, well, I'm going to pay this premium for 20, 30 years, you could talk to a financial advisor and say, if I put $3,000 a year, it's going to be more than $3,000 a year, maybe $5,000 a year, something, whatever that amount is. If I just put that in a safe investment, how much would I have in 20 years? So that would be like self-insuring. It would be setting up an investment account for yourself so that you put the money away and you can use it for whatever you want. So if you need care later, you'll be able to tap into your own investment account. And then I'd compare the premiums, and the benefits versus using your own investment account. With your own investment account, you may make more money, may be less expensive, and you'd have more options if it came to that time. You wouldn't be limited, like, hey, I need $15,000 a month for 6 months, and that's all I need. Then so you understand the flexibility. Many times I hear from people that it's like too expensive for what their budget is, but it would be good to check out, and it keeps changing. So that's why I would say, like, check it out, especially, before you hit certain markers, like either before you're 40 or before you're 50, before you're 60. Sometimes those premiums kick up to the next level, or while you're healthy, like as when you start to have cancer or heart problems or kidney problems, things like that will either exclude you from long-term care insurance or will make the premium higher. So it's worth checking out for me, because I have a partner and I have a daughter who I'm training right now. Then I'm like, it's that the long-term care insurance doesn't make sense for me right now. The closest thing, like I said, was the life insurance policy. So then it would turn into a benefit for my people if that was needed. And that brings up another topic, and we've talked about this a little bit before, but it's finding your people. As we age, the people and our friends change. So as we get older, who's our person that if something happens, that they're going to be our person or people to not only maybe we're helping take care of them or they're taking care of us. Because some of the caregiving type of things can be managed for a while, like if we have people around that can help with things. Right now, Karen's mom lives close by. She's not in assisted living. She wants to stay at home. She wants to be independent. So she gets to do that. And she's hiring people, like she has a dog walker because she can't really walk the dogs anymore. She's got a house cleaner. But when she needs help, like she calls us, like sometimes, it's even been like I've fallen and I can't get up. So we're going over. Or I need to go to the emergency room. Or I need you to help lift this thing. I need to, help with things. So right now it's sort of like we go over now and then when she needs the help. So that can kind of put a Band-Aid on things. So if you have those people, then you may not need, that would change your opinion as far as needing long-term care or an assisted living at all, right? So you find your people, and then, I don't know if it's typical of people talking to each other and go, okay, we're going to help, we're going to take care of each other, plan for that long term. It seems like it happens as we go along. The people that I've helped or been their people, I may not have even been great friends with them. Maybe I knew them for a while, but I wasn't friends with them. We didn't necessarily hang out when we were younger, but as they got older, they're like, it just comes clear, like, oh, you're my person. So, find out the information and then kind of trust the processes. Like if the long-term care insurance doesn't make sense at the time, trust the process that your people will come forward, and that you're looking for them. To look for them. Does that help?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that
Okay.
is really excellent. It's excellent for me. It's excellent. I have a lot of much older friends that are like 20 years older than me, and we've talked about a little of this stuff. So this is really, really helpful with that. It's helpful with my mom who's aging in place, and she recently broke her pelvis. And so she suddenly did need all this caregiving. And so members of our family, we just divided up the caregiving duties and responsibilities, and she's doing really great now. She's like almost totally healed and doing great. Um, but everything you've said, I'm applying it to me, to thinking about my mom, thinking about my older friends, thinking about community. So what a wonderful response that you gave. And I just want to appreciate you for doing these beautiful outreach meetings that are so generous, such a open, caring, generous spirit of yours to share this really, really helpful information. It's not just the information, it's the loving that goes along with it. Like you just answered some stuff. This kind of been niggling in the back of my head for a long time. And I'm like, oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel comforted, and I feel relieved, and I feel excited. And you're talking about thinking about who our people are. That's a beautiful thing just to have in one's consciousness, and to also know, hey, they will come forward. They're either here or they're out in the wings somewhere, and we can be proactive in connecting, being someone's person, someone else being our person or our people. And then there's also surrendering to spirit and trusting, and combining all that together. So I feel really grateful right now. Thank you.
Mm, that's gorgeous. Thank you so much. It's beautifully said, and you know, I I just feel like you just painted us such a beautiful painting. So your words were a work of art. So thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great. John, you got your hand up. John and Lori.
Hi. So we're probably a little hard to see. You can, if you actually want to see us, you can crank your video brightness up, but I don't necessarily recommend that. We're practicing our healthy light diet here from our Light and Wellness gatherings, another wonderful heartfelt offering. So anyway, I was just appreciating the sort of everything Lucy was saying, and the it reminded me of where my great grandmother passed. It was actually my first job as a minister, was to do her graveside service along with my grandmother. We did it together. We drove out to the little place in Sulphur Springs Valley, Arizona, where the family homestead was, and just a windmill and a patch of grass out in the middle of the desert, old 1940s cars rumbling up, and it looked like the scene out of a Ford movie, like it was just kind of like a black and white movie. It was great. And but anyway, the place she passed in our little town in San Diego was the Little Flower Haven Rest Home. So the little Flower Haven rest home has kind of been my image. So I just
That's
appreciate
great.
Cheryl, and then her daughter, my grandmother passed in a 6-person board and care where,
Mm.
yeah, you know, it was okay. But anyway, so it was just great, Cheryl, you know, the cruise ship, the Disney cruise, um, you know, version of assisted living just was, it's just all that is always just very helpful. And thank you. Thank you again, Cheryl, and
Mhm.
this wonderful, sacred and humorous space.
Thank you, guys. Let me say one thing that came out of my mind, and then we'll go to you, Maria. When I was working at this assisted living, the one of the first guys that moved in there would talk to all the residents. He was a retired firefighter, and he'd kind of see the new perspective people going through, and he would tell them the biggest mistake people make is they wait too long to move in here because they can't take advantage of all these fantastic activities. You know, if you wait to move in someplace, you're like, well, you can't even walk, or you know, you know, you're so declined that you can't participate. Then that's just something to consider. So if people are like, I'm going to stay at home till I can't anymore, like that's an option. So there's lots of options at the table, and then you know we all get to choose what works for us. Or yeah.
Well, I have done a little researching myself, and I must say it really scared the shit out of me, what I saw and what I was told. But I obviously haven't really dug in deep, but I went to a place near UCLA. It was in an old dormitory, and they were going to take all my money and put me in, to begin with, in a room like 3,000, no,
300 square feet. Yeah.
square feet.
Yeah.
And we have lots of activities. But even my long-term care insurance, which pays whatever I've had at John Hancock, wasn't enough to pay for what if I needed assisted living. So, I mean, it's just horrible. And he said, well, you need thousands more. And I said, well, what happens? Well, we'll get you another place if you can't pay anymore in a nursing home. So, so it's just my concern because I'm single and I also have atrial fib history. So I'm a stroke risk. So I suppose what I'm thinking is I'll just go straight into, if I have a stroke, I'll just go straight into a nursing home or something. But it sounds like there may be more options. But I was so turned off by some of these experiences that, you know, I live in my own condo in a sort of community-oriented building where everybody does help each other. And people do come and help me. Instead of going up into my attic when there's a leak, my downstairs neighbor, the young guy, goes up for me. So I have some of that going on, but I feel like I need to do more research on what I thought assisted living is just memory care. And you know, I have a client whose mother is in assisted living, and it's all people lying in bed in memory care, but it's in another state. It's in Ohio. It's pretty horrifying from her perspective. So
there are some very scary. So I hear you're scared of this whole scenario. Yes.
Yeah, I'm scared. I mean,
yeah.
But I'm knowing my person is my niece who lives in Ireland, who's going to inherit my money and my condo. But she's not exactly available to research this stuff with me. So anyway.
Yes. Okay, so you bring up some great points, which which I didn't mention about memory care. So there's three things I want to remember what you said. One, when in memory care, when someone moves into assisted living, they need to fill out a physician's report. If the physician checks the box dementia diagnosis, that person is supposed to go into a memory care community, which is, I'll say, secure, right? It's locked. They can't get out and wander. Because the assisted living community is responsible for the person. So it's assisted living, and then sometimes there's memory care within an assisted living. Okay. Your people. I think I just encourage people, I guess, from what I've seen, is like, you have the ability to make your own decisions and your own plan. And people choose what to do with their money and where they're going to live and all of that. So sometimes as we get older, we got to pay for things that we didn't necessarily plan for, because right now we get older and it's like we've got a certain expense. It's our house and we're used to that expense. And then we think, okay, when I die, like right now, if I were to die, all my stuff goes to my whoever, right? My niece. And then maybe the reality of what it's going to potentially look like sets in and go, oh, well, I'm not dead yet, and I'm going to need more care.
Yeah.
So it's the space between, okay, it goes from I'm fine to I'm not fine, and then I'm dead. That in between part is where I encourage people to look at, to think about, to, certain things we can plan for. We don't really know what that space is going to entail. But that's a part where most people look at either assisted living or staying at home or patching it together with friends. It is different, and I just see it's a different feeling for people that don't have either a spouse or a child or someone who's, it may not be their blood child, but they think that person is my person, like a child would be, like you get my sense of that, like, and they're close by, like someone who lives in another country could be that person. There's a vulnerability that kicks in. I've seen the look in people's eyes that they end up like in a hospital, and then they go into and they may end up in a nursing home after that. And that experience can be frightening. The level of care in our healthcare system is often sad. So I think it's super important for people to have somebody there to advocate for them in person. And maybe it's a person in a country that has access to hire people like a geriatric care manager here, wherever you live. I'm using you, but it's for everybody. Wherever you live, so that if you end up in the hospital or a nursing home, someone is going to be there with you. And that could sometimes takes money. So maybe that person has access to your money to help you pay for that. That gives me peace of mind, knowing that you would be cared for.
It's something I need to think about. I mean, my will and my trust are all set up, but the in-between time.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I die, my niece has a right to all my bank account and everything, but she doesn't have a right to it now, I guess.
Right.
She's
Right.
Yeah, it's figuring that stuff out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question because I have friends of mine who are they're married, they're older, like maybe say older means anything older than me, but they're like in their late 70s, but they're married, and they say, Cheryl, we're fine. We don't have kids. We have a trust set up, and the bank is going to handle all of that. You know what I know is I know very well that place in between I'm not fine and I'm dead. And the bank is not someone you want. I mean, they may know who to hire. They may have. I mean, sometimes bank officers may know to hire a care manager. But usually they're just good with paying bills, taking over the financials, like, oh, your house payment needs to be, you're in the hospital, you're not able to do that, or you're in memory care, I'll pay the bills. But as far as someone being there, advocating for you, advocating for your care, holding your hand in the middle of the night in the hospital, those things, to me, that's a warm body. That's your
Well, I had
person.
somebody, but that person's older than me by 3 years.
Yeah.
It's like not. And she's kind of
Okay.
warned me that she's maybe moving away to
Yeah.
because of her care needs. So we're very close friends, but that, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like a whole other in between kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, some people have, one person has, that I know of, they have a couple, no kids. They've got a trust set up, and in their trust, they have written that their trust officer needs to hire me as their care manager. That's a potential. Like if you go, because that person lives close to me, that would work.
Yeah.
But you could write in there, like, you need to hire a care manager, and that you could set up a relationship with a care manager or interview some people, like we're talking about being proactive, right? Maybe go to see some assisted livings, and you go, hey, if I end up that I can't make a decision in that moment, my trust officer knows where I want to go in assisted living. Or that trust officer, you can go to Aging Life Care, type in the zip code of where you are, and interview some care managers and build a relationship with them. Go like, I don't need you now, but I may need you in 5, 10, 20 years. So I want to know you. One lawyer called me, he was living in Torrance, and he's like, Cheryl, I want to meet with you. I want a business idea. I know my wife is not going to be, she's not a caregiver. So if something happens to me, I'm not going to have anybody. So I want to set up some business that I could have, I may not need anybody for 10, 20 years, but I want to know that person when I need care. So, and he's like, oh, that's going to be like a person to, a trainer, a personal trainer and a caregiver and all these things. Like, that's a great idea, because it would be nice to have a relationship with someone. But a caregiver who's going to be, if you need help toileting and bathing, those people aren't going to be available like in 10 years or 5 years. Like, those people, their jobs change day to day or week to week. So you never know who's going to be available then. But that idea of knowing your person, and it will change. For example, for our daughter, who's now 16, we had in our will if something happened to us, who was going to take care of her. And that has changed several times over time because of just the place in life she was and who was best for at that time. So your people may change over time, as far as like hands-on person. And what's really nice is that there's ways like there's stories of like people that have money and they may not have any kids, for example. And then they find people that like, look, you're going to be my person. So if anything happens to me, you're going to take care of me for however long that is. And then at the end, after I die, you're going to get all my stuff. And so they can't take it with them, their stuff or their money. So they get the peace of mind knowing someone is there for them forever. And then that person who's going to be here gets the advantage of, hey, if there's anything left at the end, that would work out for them too. So it's a win-win. So there's lots of ways to work it, but I would suggest having at least, it just gives you peace of mind. You know, we could talk more about like where to look for assisted living, because it sounds like that place was scary. And I have walked out of assisted livings before in tears, crying, going, this is the best we have for our humanity. Sad, right? So there are those places, but I want to tell you that there are some really fabulous places. Anyway, so
Thank you so much. That's
yeah, I
very,
hope that helps. And we can, we can continue. We're here every Tuesday at noon as this progresses, but there are ways to, know that you're taken care of, and good places to go if you need to. And it sounds like you're in a lovely building, and there's ways to stay there as long as possible and be safe with your AFib. I mean, people have AFib for
it's
long.
under control now, but
Yeah.
Eloquist, I'm like one of those.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, and your neighbors know, look, if I'm bleeding a lot, that's a problem, apply pressure.
I know we have a signal. I said,
Yes.
if you hear a thump and I don't
Yes.
say anything, then it's okay. If you hear a thump and I yell, and he has the key to my place.
Yes. That's great. Another step, what we're doing with Karen's mom, she lives alone. So a couple of years ago, she's like, oh, I'm really nervous. And we're like, okay. So Karen's like, how about if we just text every morning? Because she was afraid, like, I'm going to be dead on the floor, or worse than that, like not dead, but on the floor for days before anybody finds me. And so they text once a morning. As soon as one of them gets up, they text. And if Karen doesn't hear from her mom, she'll call her and go, hey, I didn't hear from you. Are you okay? So at least her mother feels a great peace of mind now, knowing that she won't be on the floor more than 24 hours before someone finds her. But it's important enough for her mom that she wants to do this. She wants to be independent, and she will do whatever she can for as long as she can to maintain that. And so we can do little things to, what works for us, because we got to take care of ourselves also, to allow her the dignity of her own space. And that'll happen for as long as it does. And then the next step will present itself. It will be very obvious. When that time comes, you're like, okay, this is that time.
I think
so we can
get a care manager, like you're saying. I do.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And then just have it in your back pocket. You don't need to necessarily pay them for ongoing thing. Maybe you check in every 6 months and you pay them for an assessment every 6 months. Make sure they're still in business. Make sure that, like, maybe they have a company that they even have younger people trained as care managers as people age out. So then you know who to call, or your niece knows who to call if something happens.
Niece, I mean, I can't.
Yep.
She's triplets. I can't just leave.
Yeah.
Right. I have to leave
good.
for a client.
Sounds good.
I don't
All
know
right.
what time you end, but
We usually end just right about 1, so it's perfect. Well, you can leave whenever you like.
okay.
I'm glad you showed up. Hope to see you again.
I'm so glad I'll be back.
Really nice to see you. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Joanne, you want to finish us off today?
Yes, I have a question about money. I live by myself, and my daughter is, said she will scoot me up if necessary and put me in her basement. Anyways, but my question is, if something was to happen, like, for example, if I had a heart attack, if I was out of commission, and she can't access my money, there's no one who could access, so I'm concerned about, do I have to have her in a position where right now she can access all my money in case this, unforeseen trauma happens, and the money is, and I'm not able to, sign the checks or make requests or whatever. So how should we have a relationship with my money?
That's a great question. So there's a couple ways to do it. There is, the best thing to do is to check with your bank. So if you have a chunk of money in your bank, say like in your checking account, I would find out about having a signer on the account, or sometimes the bank will take a financial power of attorney. Now, it's important to do that ahead of time, because once you are, say you're in the hospital and she needs to pay for care for you, but nobody can access your money. At that point, if they go, hey, let's go get a power of attorney and bring it to the bank, oftentimes the bank will say, no, you have to come. The person with the account has to be here to file that power of attorney. Now, eventually that could work, and it takes time and energy to actually have someone that you even want to have access to your account. So if you do that ahead of time, it's great. And each bank has their own way to do that. So I would go, if you're at Wells Fargo, for example, go to Wells Fargo and say, hey, if something happens to me and my daughter needs access to my account, what should I do? And they'll tell you the paperwork. So fill that out and get it notarized and bring it to the bank. Sometimes what people do is maybe they have, once someone dies, then if you have a trust set up, then that takes, the trustee can handle that. But before someone dies, another way to do that is so they have, maybe the person has money in investments, like they've got stocks and bonds and IRA and things. So like, look, I'm getting close to the time I may need some care. So they can say, sometimes they take a chunk of money, say $50,000, and they'll put it into a checking account that is accessible, that the family has access to. That if you need to pay for care, here is some cash, or in an account that's easily accessible. So you won't have to go to if it's a financial advisor that has the money, or you don't have to go cash some bonds or things. You make it easily accessible if you know that, look, I'm getting kind of close to a time, or it's more probable that I may need some care soon. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
That's great. Great prior planning. And I'm thinking of the basement. Basements usually involve stairs.
Well, actually, that was her phrase
Okay.
before I got as old as I am now. So
Okay.
before it seemed somewhat imminent, and we were actually thinking of the practicality of it, that was her phrase. And
Okay.
now that I'm gotten older, it's really I'm not winding up in the basement. She's going to wind up in the basement.
But nowadays they've got great like stair lifts. So you could be in a basement with stairs, or upstairs with stairs and have a lift, things like that. So as you're planning, and it sounds like you guys are having conversations about it, which is so important, and before you need it, which is great. So there are options when you think about, okay, if I can't walk upstairs anymore, or downstairs, or like you make doors a little bit wider, so if you need to get in through a walker or wheelchair. So there's lots of aging in place techniques, but it's great that that your daughter is going to be welcoming you into her house. That's good for some people, not good for everybody. So it's not just like, oh, of course the daughter takes people in. It can be very helpful and appropriate, and it sounds like you guys are going to make that work out really nicely.
Well, it was interesting to see as I've gotten older, where the humor of scooping me up and putting me in the basement, morphed as it became more of a possibility.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. It's a wonderful way to end our day today. Thank you so much for joining us, and hope to see you Tuesday in the future.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're very welcome.
Bye-bye.